this was a question I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
After I was going to tell Clayton to be quiet. So the fact that he's not here actually works well, because I think this is his best directed work. I think this is the best film that he's directed. What was he like as a director on this film? Just speaking as an actor.
Yeah, well, fantastic. He was the reason I'm saying. Well, I should tell you why I'm saying that. It's obvious to you to say he was fantastic, but he knew the script back to front. All directors do, as you know, whether they've written it or whether it's been written for them. A director's job is to know the script back to front. But the difference was here, where there is something additional bolted to it, is he's playing my brother in the film. So he has to not only know the film and the script and the character arcs, he has to know his own character arc, perfectly, because he is that guy. Having said that, Clay for a while wasn't going to play my brother in the film. He didn't want to do it. He said, I think I just need to focus on directing, and I think we should get someone else in. He was thinking Angus Sampson to play Gussie doesn't even know this, but Clay said, I think Angus Sampson should come in and play your brother. And I said, no, you've got to... I'd love Angus to do it, and Angus is a mate, but Clay undeniably looks exactly like me. You know what I mean? He looks like my brother. That's going to be pretty... And as you know, in a film, you try and cast the right people. Well, he looks and sounds exactly like that. We're brothers, and how great to have Shane Jacobson, Clayton Jacobson in a film about brothers. I think... you can't buy that kind of stuff because it's real. Plus, Clay can act, So I begged him. I said, you have to be in it with me. So the reason, it works so incredibly well is, number one, Clay, I've always said it, and, people don't realise the amount of craft. I mean, Clay said, and I said it a million times, people didn't realise the amount of crafting he did with Kenny. But he's a creative genius. Clay always has been. I've always known that. That's how I got to be famous. My brother was a great director. Well, so on this film, his directing was fantastic. And once people see the film, they'll see what he can craft.
What I found very, very interesting with the way he's crafted it is it's a single location film, which means he's got nothing to cut away to, which means he has to really, really be on the button. Now, like Peter Weir with the movie Green Card, you're constantly discovering nooks and crannies and corners on that location. So it's a constant voyage of discovery. Just through the house, what room are we going to be in next?
Yeah.
And it takes a very skilled director to do that. Now, initially I thought, what a brilliant piece of studio set construction has gone into this, because look at all the rich detail. I subsequently have found out that it was actually all shot on location.
It was. So there's a few bits in that, mate. So Jim, it's funny you say that, because when you talk about finding all the rooms and the nooks and crannies, because locations can get bigger if you find different corners to investigate or explore. Clay, when he first went to the house, the guy who owned the house actually said to the owner of the house, said to the location manager, God, he really is looking at every corner of this house. He's going in every single room. And Clay knew he had to make sure... In fact, we added the room. We actually put Clay had a fake wall put in to add another part of the room to give us more areas to filming. And so... And the next thing was... the house we ended up filming at, it's in country Victoria, past Ballan, and it is in the middle of nowhere. It was the first house the location manager went to, and Clay made the location scout go to 84 more houses. And in the end, Clay said it is that first one. Can you believe it? So, but the thing was, the location, I had always said we should pretend this was shot in a studio because we can win people awards for set dressing. The guy that owned the place had only 2 requests, which is he didn't want us to disturb the brown snake that lived outside the front door, and he didn't want us to get rid of any of the cobwebs. And Clay said, I don't want to remove one cobweb, I love it. But the guy said, I love the cobwebs here, this is all part of my house. His name's Bill, and he's a wonderful man, and stayed on set the whole time we're there. It was fantastic. And the radios that are there, Bill has these radios, and there's all these old cars on the property. All of it, as Clay says, the house and the location is one of the characters in the film. And so rather than remove the cars and the radios from the location, Clay said, I want them added to the script. In the script, the stepfather character was always going to have a thing that he was obsessed with, but in the end they turned it into radios because they were so amazing.
So it really was organically blended into the existing script.
Yeah, very much so. And look, we moved stuff around the house. The house undoubtedly got changed a lot and changed colours of curtains. And Clay has a very, very particular eye. I always compare him, Guillermo del Toro, who we know. There's not, and look, this can be said for a lot of directors and DOPs, but Guillermo del Toro, there's nothing in a frame of his, not a colour, not a single bit of colour that's there by accident. And Clay was the same with this film. The orange, we were wearing the orange curtains, like. Really, Clay had a very clear, even the height, the way it was shot, the height on sticks that they had the camera, everything Clay had in his mind. The way the camera slowly moves, the camera. There was a snail maneuver. Clay had a thing called a snail, and there's a snail and a slug. The slug was even slower than snail, but they had a thing where in some scenes the camera is slowly moving during the entire. We can have dialogue where Clay says, "This scene's going to go for 3 minutes." And you've got all that time to get from the front of the rail to the end of it with the camera moved so slow. But Clay had a very clear idea before we even rolled on one inch of film as to exactly how he wanted this to look. And the location, like I said, they moved a lot of stuff around. But when he saw these radios and saw the house, he said, in the end, and Clay has said, even though he made them go to like 84 other houses, he said sometimes you have to walk away from something to be sure it's actually what you want. You know, when you go and buy a house, you know what I mean? Sometimes when you go looking for cars, quite often the first car you go and look at is the one you love, and then you keep going to, I think in some ways you keep going to make sure you are making the right decision.
Now there's such a long history of films involving brothers. It's a very, very rich,
rich river,
what is it about the brother dynamic that makes it so rich and so attractive for filmmakers?
I think, and it's, I guess, siblings, isn't it? Really, it can be sisters and can be brothers. A family dynamic, be it good or bad, anyone in a cinema, most people in a cinema can associate with. I think there's nothing better than people in a cinema. As you know, when you go and watch a film about NASA, you go, that's fine because that's otherworldly. You go in and go, wow, is that what happens? Oh my God, they're going into space, and they can use language. Houston, we have a problem, and it's that's like you're getting a chance to look through the porthole of something you don't normally have access to. So there's that version, but as you know, mate, you know films as good as we do. That there's nothing, there's no better way of connecting with an audience quickly than to give them a subject matter that they actually know. And even though they don't consider themselves an expert on it, siblings or relationships within families, or a discord or a connect with families, people, in Kenny, people always said with the father character, oh my God, you reminded me of my father, and your father reminded me of my father. And it's funny, people can quickly dial into, oh my God, I think I know what's going on here. So a younger brother watching Brother's Nest would go, my older brother used to have it over me. And similarly, you watch the dynamics between a stepfather, between the real father, knowing there's a mother that's ill. There's so many things about dealing with what happens within a family environment that an audience understand. While you're trying to tell them a story, they're half guessing it anyway. They don't know what we're going to do next in this film, but the relationships they can associate with. So I think that's why brother relationships and or sister or just sibling relationships, I think it's a great spot to park a script.
What I liked about it was the theme that brought out about the different perceptions that siblings can have of parents, of family structure, of a situation. Even though they're in the family and they've lived closely together, they have different versions of what's going on. It's sort of like it's almost like a Rashomon situation where they just view relationships starkly differently, and the film really brought that out quite well, I thought.
But it's funny, isn't it, mate? Like, even Claysman said, and I agree, that sometimes you can be sitting in a pub and hearing people describe someone. They can go, Gary's not here yet, or Lisa's not here yet, and you hear them talking about that person, and hear them saying, oh, they're always late, they're this, they're that, they're this, and by the time you've heard 20 descriptions of this person, oh, they drive me mad doing this, you've formed an opinion about someone you've never ever met, and then that person turns up and you go, they seem completely fine. You'd be convinced they were going to be a monster. They seem, and when they get there, oh, how are you? And it's wonderful to see you. So it is funny, you hear a description of someone, and people can go in, and perception is everything too, isn't it? So yeah, it is funny that, and in the film, as you've said, that people, what they will experience when they watch this film is literally hearing about a family and individuals within that family, like a father who's no longer around, but you hear them talking about him and you realise they have a different standpoint, a viewpoint of of the father. And the other thing you realise is the older brother, a lot of the information for my character, who's the younger brother, and Clay plays the older brother, the information I was getting about my father, from when I was too young to remember, went through the filter of my older brother and down to me. And when something goes through a filter, it's not the same as when it entered the filter, is it?
The nature of the comedy in this is so interesting because it's so situational. I don't think there's really I don't think there are any jokes actually told in the film.
No.
And although it's a dark comedy, it is a comedy. All the humour comes from the situation. It's situational humour. How much did you enjoy doing that?
Oh, it's fantastic because as you know, someone can fall over on the street, and some people find that amusing. Like, comedy can sometimes come from really strange places. It's, as we know, there's pie in the face, and there's laugh out loud and slapstick and all that. But sometimes, like I say, some people, if someone trips over in front of them, I mean, you've got to think about this. Remember that show, what was it called? Funniest Home Videos. Half of that show was filled with human beings really hurting themselves. How funny that show ran for 20 years or something. People falling off a skateboard and hitting their head or falling on their backside. The person in the shot, they're not even actors. There's no stunt coordinator. When a person slips off, you know, when the skateboarders, they slip off a railing and they hit the bar, hits them right between the legs. People find that hilarious. That's a real person getting really injured.
That's YouTube.
But it's YouTube.
Millions of
I know,
hits.
isn't it? So that's funny. Comedy can come from really strange places. And in Brother's Nest, it is. You're right, mate. There's some situations, there's moments, there's scenarios that, as an audience, you look at and go, "That's outrageous." Or even the conversations they're having. They don't have, that's bizarre. That doesn't even make sense. They're having these chats. They're talking about, and the fact that you got, they've got to try and plan a murder, but they're not murderers. So the research that the older brother's done, and it's ridiculous. But that's what we love about it. It's a very different comedy, and as you know, it's more like a Greek tragedy, and the comedy's woven in there. But it's a thriller. It's a drama. But that's what we love about it. That's why when we heard that someone said it's like the Coen Brothers meets Alfred Hitchcock, we went, God, how lovely to be compared to that. Mangles is exactly the analogy Clay always uses, because he did, as you know, he used to take it on the road. But we come from Carney folk anyway, so my dad spent his youth with the grandparents were part of a carnival, so for us this kind of makes sense to do it this way. Plus it's kind of the idea of hitting the road, yeah, I've got a bad foot, but it doesn't mean I can't. Look at that. How's that for a shot? Look at that.
That's beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful. When Nick Giannopoulos was bringing out The Wog Boy, the Australian film industry was just in an absolute soup. It was just a mess.
Yeah, it was
mess.
Yeah.
Yet he was able to bring out a film that made $10 million in the middle of that.
Yeah.
And he basically just went out and sold.
Yeah.
So Shane, how do you reflect on the marketing of Australian films? You've gone a very unique road with this one, but generally speaking, what do you think about the marketing and the public profile that the average Australian film gets? It's
expensive to get everyone to know about a film. Costs a lot of money to get to the point that people, because you can. It's interesting when I do a promotional tour, I can do like a 10-day tour or a week tour, and I can do 130 interviews. But you do them, like I do that a lot. I do that more than people would ever think. So when I do a state a day, and every state you go to, you'll do 25 or 30 interviews in a day, and you'll do screenings at night, and you'll do a couple of TV shows. You'll hit the local paper, a couple of regional papers, the main paper, the Herald Sun in Melbourne, Daily Tally, all that sort of stuff. You'll then go, you might go on the project, you'll do a whole bunch of FM stations, AM stations, print media, magazines, you'll do it all. And what'll happen is, after I've done that, I feel like I've done nothing but talk about the film on, you've covered Australia. And close personal friends or people you bump into might say, well, what have you been doing? I've been promoting a film. Oh, what film's that? Brother's Nest. Oh, yeah, what's that about? And they go, oh, right, I haven't heard about that. So is it coming out in cinemas? You go, yeah, I've been on tour. Oh, right. And then so you can do all that, and it won't scratch the surface. And then you might have someone say, I heard you on the radio the other day. What was that on? And you go, I don't know, I've done like 20 or 30 or 40 or 100. So it doesn't matter how hard you work. And the only way to really get it out there is do a lot of that. But then if you want to get billboards and stuff, that costs a fortune. So your question was, what do I think about the way that people market films? You've either got to work your ass off, or you've got to pay a fortune, or both. And there's just not the budgets in Australia. We don't have the population, we don't have the budgets to do that. So quite often the best way to do it is to kind of go out there and do a promotional tour and get to the people. And that's what always worked in the past. People need to understand what the film's about. You've got to talk about it, describe it a bit, and then, you know, if the film kind of suits someone's needs or what they would go and see, then they might go and see it. But what I love about it sounds weird, through misfortune has come opportunity. You know, I've hurt my foot, snapped my Achilles heel, so now I have no choice but to hit the road. But this is how it used to happen, and I think if people want a film to be a success, you really do. You have to get out there and tell people about it. In order for a song to become a hit, it has to get to people's ears. And they've got to start humming the tune before it's a hit. And that's what happens with a film. It's got to get into a cinema and people have to sit down and see it and hear it and watch it and talk about it for it to become a thing. So you've really got to get out there and do it. So actors can't film a film and then walk away and expect it to become something. You've got to hit the ground running.
Now, on top of all the work that you guys are doing promoting the film, I think an irony has kicked in with this new era of the mega blockbuster. Because you're opening up against Jurassic World 2.
Yeah.
And so that's your competition.
Yeah.
Now, instinctively, one might have said a short while ago, forget about it, you're dead.
Yeah.
However, what's happened in the last few years is this concept of counter-programming. And quite often, and I have noted it, you will have #1 at the box office, the latest mega cartoon, whatever, comic book, hero, crap, adventure, fantasy, blockbuster movie, $150 million, but whatever. And then at #2 or #3, you will have an art house film.
Yeah.
The 100-Foot Journey or something.
Yeah.
And so people are, I think, ironically attracted to smaller, quieter films because of the noise and the swirl of big films. They'll say, listen, I will get to that. That film's not going anywhere.
That's not going anywhere, true.
Yeah, and while, of course, the target demographic will go see that film, other people will say, well, you know what, that film can wait a couple of weeks for me. I'll go see this interesting sounding small film that I have heard of, thankfully because of some marketing push. But I think that scenario now exists. We have counter programming, and hopefully that'll happen with Brothers Nest.
Yeah, exactly. Well, mate, you know, we hope for that too, and it is. And mate, it's been great. I mean, look at this. There's so many analogies we could give or comparisons, and it's funny in Hollywood they used to do that thing. And I'm not saying it's necessarily the way it happens now, but in some ways it is. The film either has to be 200 million or it has to be 10 million, which is like a Little Miss Sunshine, or it has to be Thor. Do you know what I mean? It is that. You know, it is a smaller... Look, and if you are going to do a smaller film, the thing you've got to lean on, and that's what we have with Brothers Nest, is it's got to be a great story. And it's got to be a great journey, because you and I know, for a film... For filmmakers and film lovers, the anoraks like you and me, and people who love the world of film for 1,000 reasons, not just the entertainment factor, but the craft and the machination of it. You know, the three things that make a great film are, as we know, a great story, 2, a great story, and 3, a great story. All the rest is just cream and cherries. But as we know, you can then get big blockbusters which are a visual delight. Like you know, and I love them too. I love going into something where they've vomited $200 million onto the screen that is just special effects and just noise and sound and this and that. But I love it. Don't get me wrong. You know, am I going to go and watch Thor? Absolutely. I want to see it all. You know, they've spent all this money. Let's look at it. It's great. But that's what is great, is that, and in Australia it does happen that people will go and support a good film, but you got to give them, you got to pay them back. If you go into a restaurant and go, look, I'm happy to pay the same here as next door, even though they've got all the great furniture, but please make it a good meal. Make it a good meal. Like, feed me. So that's what we do hope, and you're right, mate. We hope that, you know, the blockbusters continue, because I love that. My kids want to go and see that. But for people who want to go and see a good story and watch a good film as well, they can walk into a cinema and watch Brothers Nest and walk out. And this film takes people on a journey. People that walk away, the thing we love about our film, and already South by Southwest and Rolling Stone magazine called it the sleeper hit and all that kind of stuff, is that people that have seen it have said to us, you know, the next day we were still thinking about your film. It stays with them, and that's what we love about this one. This is, you know, I've been in some films and even some recently where, you know, people walk away and go, oh, it was a bit of, you know, lollipop entertainment, but with this one it stays in people's minds, and that's when we know we've done our job.
Let me just quickly wrap up there. Just quickly, Jamie Brown, the guy who wrote the script. What's the difference between what he sent you and what's up on the screen? Is there a big discrepancy?
No. So Jamie Brown wrote the script. It was great. Honestly, it was great from the first read. The film you see was in that original draft. So well, he's sort of towards the end of his drafts. Clay did a lot of work with it. So Chris Parlow worked on it. Jamie Brown wrote it. Clay then did some work on it. Me and Clay, I did a little bit, not much, just added few little flavours and few little herbs here and there. But they cooked the meal. But every now and then, like a lot of actors, you like to throw your own sort of few herbs on it. But Clay and Jamie did a lot of work on it. But look, Jamie and Chris Parlow did a lot of work again. But the script was good to begin with. Like the second I read this and Clay said Jamie's written the script for us and I read it, I immediately said, we have to do this film. So, they did a great job.
Just two more questions. Firstly, just coming back to what you were saying before about turning misfortune into an opportunity. This is your philosophy of life. You are very much a glass half full and possibly a bit more than half full type of person, aren't you?
Yeah.
This has carried you through. Since Kenny's hit, you've weathered every misstep.
Yeah.
But even when that happens, like when we spoke last time and I teach you with the barbecue, you don't get up, you don't seem to get upset.
No.
You seem to just sort of grab it, okay, that happened, there's nothing I can do. Can you just tell me a bit about your incredibly robust and resilient philosophy of work, of life. That's getting you through?
Well, mate, the thing, I've put it down, I guess, to a few simple things, which is, number one, I've done that show, Who Do You Think You Are? Our family comes from a very, very, very long line of poverty. There's no money. There's nothing. Like, my dad was born and raised in a tent until he was 21. My dad was literally, didn't live in a house until he was 22 years of age. So, we came from nothing, but we had, we enjoyed life and we've got each other. We've got a great sense of family. This film, Brothers Nest, directed by my brother, and I'm acting in it with my brother. My nephew's in the crew working on it, So family's everything to us. So as long as you don't take that from us, we're going to be all right. I know I can live without money because I've been through moments where I haven't had money. So we come from a family that just said, and my dad always said it, and a lot of his advice just continually echoes through our head. And Dad's still with us, but he's one of our greatest coaches, which was, it doesn't matter if you get punched out. What really makes a difference is how quick you get off the canvas. It's a boxing analogy because Dad runs a boxing gym. I spent my whole life as a kid dreaming of becoming an actor. It is my duty to the world that's done me the favour of letting me act, and I think it is my absolute duty and joy that I owe it to Australia that have let me, that kind of enjoy me doing entertainment and allow me to enter their lounge rooms, and people who pay money to go into a cinema to watch a film that I've made. I'm not going to their house. If they're a builder, I don't go to see the house they've built. There's women raising children. I don't knock on their door and go, look, I'm just coming to see what a great job you've done of raising your children. But people take time and spend their money to come and watch stuff that I do. So I owe it people to enjoy the fact that I'm acting, because it was my dream to act. I love it. I love it every day, and every job I do, I love it. How it gets perceived is one thing, and you want people to love it, but I'm acting in films. I'm on stage entertaining. If 4 people turn up to the show or 10,000 people turn up, I'm on stage with makeup, in wardrobe, being paid to act. I love it. So, seriously, there's people doing worse jobs than this. So, and I don't take it too seriously. I get to meet great people. You and me bump into each other semi-regularly. You love film, I love film, my brother loves it. Every journalist I speak to or film critic, we love films. Because it's good fun. It's just good fun.
What happened to your foot? How did you hurt it?
So what happened to my foot was, I was in Monaco for the Grand Prix. Daniel Ricciardo, wonderful Australian boy from Perth, wins the Grand Prix. Was celebrating afterwards. It may have involved a little bit of drinking, Jim. Just a little bit, in slight moderation, multiplied by 10. And I was dancing and I injured my foot. When I went to the Monaco hospital, they said I'd just sprained it. So they let me get back on a plane and I flew back to Australia. So for 7 days I walked around on what was supposedly just a sprained ankle. But the toe started to turn black and my foot started to swell and it just got worse. So I went to a doctor. It turns out I'd snapped my Achilles heel. It had disappeared up into my calf. on the flight. I got deep vein thrombosis, have 2 blood clots in my leg. So it went from what was supposed to be a sprained ankle 7 days later to kind of pretty serious. So I'm not allowed to get on a plane because of the blood clots, and so as a result, you know, I've got to keep my leg up all the time for a few weeks.
Are they reattached?
They have. So I've had an operation. They cut my leg and they grabbed it and stitched it back into my muscles. So it's a bit of a long recovery, but still, you know, still got my leg.
It's a supplementary question. With Clayton out of the room, what are your views on the possibility of a Kenny sequel? Kind of, I guess, incorporating what I said before about how people don't care about time lapse.
Well, the thing with it, and it does come up a lot. People always ask about the
It's because that film. Sorry. It's because that film holds up. You never stop liking that character, and that makes it eminently rewatchable. Sorry.
Yeah, well, so every time the question gets put to us, we did Kenny's World, which is a TV series, and we felt like that answered everything that was left to be answered. But I'm going to go with the way you asked the question rather than my answer, because that is normally our answer. Answer normally is, look, we think we did everything we could do with Kenny in the TV series. Rather than do another film, we did Kenny's World, and he travelled the world, and you got to spend time with him. And there's also the other little bit of a filmic answer is that part of the joy of Kenny was people discovering this character. And he's not an actor. That's why the mockumentary worked well. He's better being talking to the camera in question, but he's not an actor. And it would be weird, it would be quite a shift to all of a sudden do a film where unless you do a mockumentary style again, and people now know it's me playing it, like there's a few things that file the edges off it a bit. You know, because once you know the wizard's behind the curtain, pulling the levers, the magic of the Wizard of Oz is lost a little. So, you can't have him acting in a movie. You'd have to stick with that mockumentary style because Kenny's not an actor. He's a character that we created that you interview. But your question was the interesting one, which is, as you've said, Jurassic World's coming out. It's been 25 years since the first one. So the truth is that your point is valid. We keep answering the question now, which is 12 years later. We're still saying, I don't think we'd be doing any sequel. But your point's valid. In 25 years... You know, who knows? You know, who knows what happens in 25 years when me and Clay, if everyone keeps saying, please, 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 you know, don't kill Kenny, bring him back.
Well, again, you know, I don't want to...
You never know. But you keep asking the question and you'll keep putting ideas in our head.
I do need to leave you alone and to get out of here.
No.
But even Ricky Gervais, who swore that is the end of The Office, even he revisited that character just like 2 or 3 years ago.
The sentence I've said it a few times, and I mean it. So it's not a little wink. But when you say never, you know, look, as a really weird analogy, some people say that's it. We don't want any more children. But the act of lovemaking is pretty good, and sometimes the byproduct of that is a child. So it's not a bad thing,
well,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
and also sorry, go on.
Yeah, and so, you know, who knows what we'll say in 10 years? But that's why you, Mr. Embry, every time you bring it up, the funny part is you walk away and Clay goes, he said it again, and then
imagine Kenny, the Shantuzi, what was her name? She's
Yvonne Bibra,
She's still
absolutely,
she's still wonderful, and she's very talented.
Amazingly talented. Yvonne Bibra looks exactly the same today as she did when we filmed it. We've all got older and everything else. Eve is timeless.
How's their marriage going? How is Kenny's business going? How is his son doing? What is his son in the plumbing business?
Well, if you see the size of Jess, who is my nephew, who played my son in the film, who's Clayton's son in real life, once you see him, that's going to blow people's mind because he's not a little boy anymore. Me and Clay keep saying he's as big as he's enormous.
But is he a plumber or was he a plumber and is he now running or helping to run the company that you still work for?
Or has he run away from that company and doesn't want to be a part of it?
Maybe he's an academic or maybe he's an author or something. Who knows? But I guess it just
let's have this chat in 10 years and see. We'll have this chat. Might be in 8 years.
It's a lovely conversation.
Well, every time you have the conversation again, you flick seeds into our garden, Mr. Shambry, and one day you're going to walk away and it's going to rain and those seeds will start to grow and I'll say, that bastard, he's done it again.